I was gonna say, no, I can't hit go live.
It looks like they're already ready.
Hey, Brittany.
We have Breeze here. Hi, Breeze. Yes. So are we? Um, I
We
did
can.
have our little intro queued up, but
Not you
we,
had the intro queued up to share the video.
I did, but I think I'm gonna not do it
No, I
because
feel it.
I don't think I can stop it just in case.
Yeah. Hey, Aaron.
Aaron's here.
Aaron was
Hi,
kicking it
Aaron.
with us last night until like two
Mm-hmm.
o'clock in the morning. I
Y'all
think
went
we
for
were up
five
till two.
hours.
Yeah, I think we were up till two. And that wasn't my intention last night either to be up for 5 hours. That was not.
I know you said that was my last sprint, and I was like, okay, we're gonna wrap this up. And then I looked at the timer. I was like, fam.
I was still going. I was still going. It was crazy, man. It was crazy. Hey,
Midwest Reader, what's
hey,
up?
hey, hey, hey.
It never is her intention for real.
Hey, Hannah. Yeah, yeah.
Hello,
I feel
hello.
it never is my intention, Aaron, but it always ends up happening that way, unfortunately. Well, not unfortunately. I still,
Yeah,
um, that's cool. No, don't apologize for missing sprints. Playing
nice.
Magic the Gathering? What is that?
But the card game,
I've never heard of Magic the Gathering.
I've heard of a game called Magic, but it's like a card game, kind of like Pokemon cards kind of situation, if
I've,
I understand it correctly.
I've never played Pokemon either.
Well, I've never played it, but I've seen it done. That wasn't
Okay.
really my forte.
Hey, hey.
Nothing wrong with it. There's Emma.
Hey, Emma Ray
Right.
started a channel. I
I
saw.
know I subscribed, but I haven't watched the video
I
yet.
saw, I saw, I saw hopping into the game. I feel it, I feel it, I feel it.
I'm excited.
That's exciting. Hey, hey, hey.
Hey. Oh, it's
All
skipping
right.
up on me.
Oh, it's hopping already? It's kind of early for it to
Yeah,
be
it's
jumping.
not. Yeah, I mean, it's probably user error. um. Ooh. Okay. Maybe it's something nerdy I need to get into for real. Yeah, I'm thinking. Yeah,
I've never played Pokemon cards.
yeah.
All
We're
right,
excited for you.
well, we can
Okay.
start.
Yeah.
Um, unless you want to give, hey Chloe, unless you want to give people like one more minute to like 7:35 your time, 8:35 my time.
Yeah. Let's give them 5 minutes.
Okay, 5 more minutes or just one more minute.
No, no, no. 5 minutes total to get
Okay,
here
okay.
from
I'm
when we
about to
start.
say what?
Sorry. No, no, no. No, because I'm chomping at the bit to get this popping.
Hey Salter.
Yeah. I saw them at your sprints last
Did the
night.
sprints last night? Yeah, we were
Yeah.
chopping up some good conversations last night.
Yeah.
2 o'clock in the morning, kicking it.
Yes, me too. We're pretty good. We're pretty good now. We gave them 5 minutes, Ashley.
All right, all right, all right. Let's go. Let's get it. You want to introduce yourself with your home channel information?
Sure. I am Deidra. My home channel or my bookish channel is Shade Tree Reads, and I think I'm going to try to just a teeny bit of why we're doing this for right now in my introduction because I had started my channel back in March of 2020, so I'm almost at a year, and around that time I had I had been watching BookTube for, I'd say, maybe about a year,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have too many Black booktubers in my sub box. And I had you, I had Monty, I had Mayana, I had the Novelush, I had Injury, I had Mina, and then everybody else was not Black. um, and only a few of those people read romance, and then
Mm-hmm.
even fewer of those people read Black romance. And that is something that I've always been interested in, and not just Black romance. I love romance as a genre anyway. But when I started my channel and I noticed, somewhat of a hole, I wanted to kind of bring that to the forefront in my reading. But then I was having a hard time finding Black romance
Mm-hmm.
on the shelf, or it would look like Black romance where there was two Black characters on the cover, or we just have a woman and you would have to read the book to figure out if it was or if it wasn't Black love.
Yeah.
And I just started to feel like if what I love was not being shown and marketed that much. And so that's kind of why I'm here, like the basic basic explanation.
All right. So, for those of you who may not know, I'm actually, my channel's over, it's the Bookish Realm, and I've been part of the BookTube community for um, a very long time, back when there really weren't a lot of Black booktubers to even begin with. It's nice to kind of see that expanding now. And I always feel like my journey, of course, is so different from Deidre's because I feel like you've been reading romance for such a long time, and
Mm.
I'm definitely a newbie. I will always cop to the fact that I'm a newbie at it because I just started reading romance in general within the past 2 years. I was I don't I keep saying that, like, I was against romance, but I think I just had a perception of romance that wasn't real. I think I thought it was going to be like cheesy and like not anything that I'd be interested in, but my turning point was definitely, I went through a really difficult point in my life, and I actually have gotten a romance book for review, and I was like, okay, and I read it, and it was an instantaneous emotional connection, and then I just kind of went down the rabbit hole from there. And I think at first, when I started reading romance, and this is just my personality in general, to kind of, I'm willing to pick up anything, but it's kind of hard not to notice, when you start deep diving into romance in general, the marketing tactics that are used, in which you don't really see two Black characters at the forefront. It's not saying that it didn't exist in the time that I jumped into read, because it definitely does exist. But I think the accessibility of it was very shocking to me, to know that when I saw a lot of romances that were being marketed, when I started watching a little bit more of the romance community side of BookTube in general, um, I wasn't seeing anybody reading romance that featured two Black characters. And of course, for me, the history side of me um, was very intrigued about how historically, what has happened in terms of the Black community historically, um, that has caused that to happen. So for me, I'm here as a learning process of my own, and to share that information. And, Deidre and I have talked a lot one on one about, you know, we kept wanting to get people to hop on and to kind of see what we were talking about, but it just got to a point where it was like, you know what, enough trying to convince people in the booktube community to see what we see. At this point, it's just time to kind of carve out this space for ourselves. So this is definitely a journey. I mean, we're learning as we go too. Deidra definitely has more experience in reading romance, so I have a lot more learning to do. I have a tendency to read a lot more indie. I know Deidra has read a lot more traditionally published. So you're getting two differing perspectives, but two individuals that are very much so dedicated to um, making sure that we're speaking, I don't want to say on behalf of, but we're speaking for um the benefit of reading Black love romance. So yeah.
Yeah, and from a place of, at least for me, a place of appreciation for that
Yeah.
being a thing. Um, so just, I don't want to. I haven't read very many of the newer, many of the indie, and that's kind of part of why we're doing this too, is because I was reading a lot of my foundation is from like middle school and high school is where I read the majority of the romance that I have read. So like I was reading, Goosebumps and John Grisham, even though that's not a kid author. I was reading The Stand and The Pelican Brief and stuff like that. And then my mom also on her shelves, she had Stephen King, and she had a few other white authors. And so I can't remember, did Stephen King write The Stand?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Yeah, so I read that. And is that the one? I forget which one he wrote, where there's a guy that kind of shrinks away, and they made a movie, like an ABC movie. I don't remember. It might be The Stand. But anyways, so in this book, he was just using the N word just so much.
Mhm.
And so I looked at the author photo. I was like, oh, this is a white man. Okay. Uh, in middle school, you don't really understand the gravity of that word with the hard R, and then when
Yeah.
it comes from in one of your hobbies, when you get that thrown at you, it's kind of like, ugh, I don't know. So, and I think maybe just my experience reading like Lois Duncan, who is or was a YA writer.
Yeah, a lot of horror,
She
pivotal.
wrote, yeah, she
Yeah, I
wrote,
know what you did last summer.
yeah, she
Yeah.
wrote that.
Uh-huh.
And so, but there's not any black characters in her books either. You got the one black character in the Babysitters Club. So I always like those type of things. But I was like, where are my black people that I'm looking
Yeah.
at? My world doesn't look like these books. And so I started looking at the covers of these other books that
Mhm.
my mom had on her shelf. And it just so happened that all those books were romance for the most
Mhm.
part. If not romance, they were contemporary fiction with mostly black characters and a black cast. And so that's just where, and I always remember how those books made me feel to see those characters, to see those covers, even though we can have a conversation about how most of those covers were animated back in the
Mhm.
90s, or not animated, illustrated.
Mhm.
Um, we can have a conversation about that at some point. But that's just where I just want everybody here watching to know that's just kind of where I am. And so I stopped reading for the most part, for pleasure, when I got to college. And then I graduated college in 2006 in December. And if you remember, the housing bubble burst in like March, or the bubble burst in like March or April of 2007. And it was just hard to find a job. I didn't get accepted into grad school, and I was out of college, didn't know, what to do really with my life. And I was living with my parents again, which, when you think about it, if you think about how when you're in college, you think about, your life is I'm gonna get this degree and I'm gonna get this job and then I'm gonna get my 2.5 kids and whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
or you're gonna get the high paying job and you're gonna get, the car and the house, whatever it may be that you aspire to get when, you're fresh out of college. That just I just didn't have an opportunity for that to happen for me,
Mhm.
just because of the economy and the way my environment was.
Mhm.
So I ended up working at Starbucks for like 3 years. And then I worked at a my cat is doing his night thing. I worked at a physical therapy and occupational therapy facility for a while. And I was like, okay, it's been a little while. The economy's picking up. I'm still not reading yet, but the economy's picking up. Maybe I can get into school. And I couldn't get into grad school. So I'm at this job that's like an entry level job. I do have a bachelor's degree. I'm in a small town. It's not a whole lot to do outside of, as far as career wise, it's not a whole lot outside of the big old hospital we have there or
Mhm.
teaching, or unless I wanted to work in like manufacturing or something like that. It's just that none of those things were really anything that I was interested in. So I moved, and I moved here to Dallas. This is like 2012. I moved to Dallas, and I finally get to a place where okay, I could get to a company and start to have that office job and start to like get my, what's the word, experience under my belt. I did have a degree, but I was working these odd jobs just to, be able to say I had a job,
Mhm.
And then so I get settled and start feeling comfortable, and then I'm like happened into a bookstore.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, I remember how much I love to read. So this was probably, like I said, 2012. And I'm just going through a regular bookstore. It's a Barnes and Nobles, and it's a half price bookstore. They don't have those sections where it's the Black authors in these two particular stores, which we can talk about that at some point, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I'm just browsing the shelves, and they have the new releases, and they have, in the used bookstore, they have, just the different sections, and I'm not seeing any Black authors. I'm not
Mhm.
seeing, it's not like people weren't writing. There are plenty of books published during these periods of time that Black authors put out in all these genres, not just romance. But what I was seeing was none of that. I was just having to buy books that, this is like I said, 2012. Having to buy books. I was reading the Divergent series, the Hunger Games,
Mhm.
Sookie Stackhouse series. Um, and now then that's when I was introduced to paranormal romance.
Mhm.
And there are some fairly decent representation of Black folks in that series. I'm thinking more of the show than the book,
Mhm.
but like, how amazing would it have been if we had gotten a series like that from a Black author first,
Yeah.
of so I just started to, kind of feel like, dang, well, I didn't know that these people were making these books. It was like
Mhm.
they weren't doing it,
Mhm.
so I got to start to booktube. We're fast forwarding a little bit, because the first book that I read that really got me out of my reading slump, just period, was American Gods. And
Okay.
then I was like, I need to see what people are saying about this book, because now I'm watching YouTube, but I'm not watching it for books. I was watching it for like photography, for coloring. I used to just watch people color for hours, and I don't really do that anymore. But like, YouTube is not suggesting anything to me. I'm a Black reader. I'm Googling. Algorithms are a thing.
Yeah.
Um, and so
We could
I
talk
didn't
about
see
that.
any. Yeah, we can talk
Yeah.
about
We talk
that.
about
So
that. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
searching for a title of a book, and YouTube decides who to show to me, in what order to show to me. They know my demographics because I'm signed in to YouTube, with my Gmail account or whatever. So we can talk about that. So we get to finally seeing people on YouTube talk about books. And I used to have a thing about reading on my phone. But then when I got to Kindle and I started reading, I think the first indie romance that I read was, um, what is it called? It was by Christina C. Jones. It was No, that was by
Katrina Jackson.
Katrina Jackson. I said Katrina C. Jones. I just mixed those two
No.
authors right up. Katrina Jackson. And I just was like, oh my God. And then Kindle will start, as all of y'all probably know, Kindle will start suggesting things. I'm like, where has all of this been? And why isn't it in print? Why is it only in ebook? Anyway, so now I'm here. I've got so much just like in my head about how this whole Black romance, from somebody who is like actively looking for it and actively Googling, like if you go to Barnes and Noble right now today, go to the romance section, maybe do this tomorrow, see how long it takes you to get to a cover that looks like two Black people on it without putting in any search options. Just go to romance and start scrolling. Just see what that looks like today in 2021, and then ask yourself why that is the way it is.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that I want to stress is that, it's not that romance, Black love romance doesn't exist, because I don't want anybody to get that perception that it doesn't, because it does exist and it has existed. And it's stuff has been published. It's in what I would consider library terms is the accessibility of it that is a problem. And I look at it too from a booktuber standpoint too. When you don't have people recommending, or you don't have people pushing content, it goes unnoticed. Same thing with an algorithm. Like, I don't know how many people actually saw the video that we did, but literally that, when I put that screen grab in that video, I literally went to Barnes and Noble and went to their romance section and literally was scrolling through, and you literally are not going to see any best-selling romances with two Black people unless you're talking about Beverly Jenkins, to be honest with you, because I mean, that just to me is kind of a staple. That is a household name, especially in the booktube community, especially in the romance booktube community. And I think for me, that's where my issue lies, is that I think we pick one person and we use that person to justify that we're doing our part, which doesn't broaden anyone's horizons. And I'm only speaking about the booktube community here, because there are other people who are advocating across other platforms on Instagram and Twitter. There are a lot of people who are advocating for Black romance, but in our community in booktube, there's only a handful of people that I can think of off the top of my head who are doing it. And most of them are not a part of that nuclear part of the romance part of booktube. So I just find that dynamic really, really interesting. And we'll get into, I feel like, some nitty gritty aspects of just different parts of just romance in general.
Yeah, we will. It's
Miss
just
W.
what is
Go
it?
ahead. No, I was about to say Miss WOC reader. Yeah, just made a. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. hmm and I think too, it's one of those things too. It's not. We talked about this last night. It's not an attempt to take away from what others have done. It's not to take away
Yeah.
from the fact that Beverly Jenkins is an amazing author. I've read her work. She's gifted. She's an OG. Highest respect in regard for her. That's not to take away from Alyssa Cole. I like Alyssa Cole, but I think that we get so stuck on certain individuals that we then come from a place where we don't want to broaden our horizons. And we'll talk, I mean, tonight I feel like we'll get into a little bit about why it feels taboo almost for people to see two Black individuals, regardless of gender identity, sexual orientation. It's just two Black people in love seems to be very, very taboo, which there's a lot of history behind that as well. So
Yeah, one of the articles we read, I'm just gonna click on it real quick so I don't misquote it.
mhm.
But there was the first Black Black love or black romance, ethnic romance was in 1989, was it?
It was, I think
The
it was
one that, or 79?
it was a little
This
bit
is the wrong article.
it was in, are you
I got
talking
the
about
wrong article pulled up.
The one that Vivian Stevens had her hands in? That was, I think,
Hmm.
it was the early part of the 80s is where you see the
Yeah.
first time like um a romance featuring two black characters gets published tradition in a traditional manner.
Yes. So that's what, not even 40 years ago? Really?
Yeah, and it hasn't. I mean, it's not that far removed. That's the craziest thing.
Yeah.
Every time I think about it, is that when we think about time in terms of publishing, because um, I'm just kind of go off a little bit. I think about, because we talked about this a little bit too. The romance side of BookTube right now is going through um, a wave of historical romance. That is the kicker. Like that's the thing that everybody is eating up right now. And I mean, it's not a problem because I read my first true historical romance I think last year, and I've been picking up some here and there. But what I find so fascinating is that just thinking about the access that some of these white women had, they were putting out these romances. We're talking about 60s, 70s, 80s. And then when we read these articles and we start doing research, we find out that it wasn't until Vivian Stevens in the early 80s that a black woman wrote a romance with two black characters that was published in a traditional way. So already right there, it's kind of like, I don't want to say it's we're starting later, which is why we end up in situations like, I'm going to use myself as an example, the historical romance readathon. Like that for me was a big deal because it's crazy and we were talking that day and I was like, I've been searching for hours trying to find um, historical romances that featured two black characters and how difficult that was. Because when we think about it, it's just the accessibility is not there because we weren't able to publish until so much later. And then we even found out, it's a whole different article that we read, which I don't even know if I have it saved, where like when Arabesque was formed, they stopped taking submissions for historical romance. The ones that were there, they're out of print now. If you can get your hands on some, which I have three of them, they're so difficult to get your hands on. So I always think that not the age, but the time difference, um, even that plays a huge role in what we see in terms of accessibility. Because if we want to talk, I mean, we will talk about historical romance. So I don't want to dive too much into it. Um, the household name is who? Beverly Jenkins. Like that's all.
That's it.
That's all
That's it.
people know. That's it.
That's it. That's all I know. But that's all that for right now. That's the biggest name that in
Yeah.
as far as black authors, unfortunately. I mean, there are, I can't even, honestly, off the top of my head, I can't give you another one. Another author that is known for black historical romance. I know that other authors write it and
Mm-hmm.
have some books and series, but like
Mm-hmm.
as far as a household name goes, or
Mm-hmm.
even just give you five of them. I can give you five black romance writers or black love writers, but I can't give you historical romance, which is a big thing. Like black people exist throughout time and history of the earth. Like, like I just don't understand why. There's two things I don't understand: why it's always in the antebellum South or America, United States. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
um, or why we like no other pockets of the earth act like black people existed there or were in romantic relationships.
Well, I think that, you know, a lot of that, and then, you know, just thinking about just listening to you just talk about the fact of like um people not you know, black people not existing is, I feel like, because trauma is so closely associated with black people, that
Yeah,
unless the story is traumatic,
yeah,
there's no way that you can write a story about black joy in a historical romance type of setting because it didn't exist, which is not
right,
true, but that is the mainstream perspective that a lot of people think. People think 1800s, they think black people, they instantaneously think slavery. And it's like
yeah,
it's like, oh my gosh, I mean, like, that's not, you know, that's not all that the black community is or was, you know, that is a part of our history, but that's not our sole identity type of, you know, situation.
yeah. Not romance related. I'm reading a book called The Black Tudors. An Untold Story is a nonfiction book, and it's about set in England in the 1500s, and it's
Mhm.
just, you know, people were like, "Oh my God, what were
Yeah,
they doing?" Like free Black
yeah.
people, in working and doing things in around the world, but especially in England, Tudor England. It's like they existed and they had relationships and families and all kinds of things.
Hmm.
But we only hear about certain types of stories. So,
No, that's very true.
and that's another reason why we're doing this is because there are good examples and they do exist. It's just
Hmm.
some things are are hard to find, and you do have to go a little bit
You do have to
extra,
dig. Yeah,
yeah, to
do
get
you
it.
do have to dig. Yeah, Piper Hewley is definitely an author that I have one of her books, I believe. But yeah, all of her stuff is indie. Yeah, and she's indie. And a lot of what I found for that
Ooh,
readathon was independently
oh,
published.
yeah, her Black HBU series. Oh,
It's
okay.
contemporary interracial romance. Okay, okay.
Yeah, so you know, I have let's see. So we define Black love as where all the parties in the romantic relationship are Black. Like, in case
Yeah,
anybody
yeah.
was questioning that definition, it's like that is how we define it, and I
Mhm.
think that is the definition of Black love.
I too, because you know, I know that Black Prose Club was talking about this a little bit about people using like hashtags, especially now with it being February, you know, Valentine's Day being tomorrow. By the way, today's Black Love Day. If you did not
Yeah.
know, um, I put it on Twitter this morning. I was like, you don't know what it is, go Google it. But it was started in '93. But definitely you should. I mean, if you ever do get a chance to read on how Black Love Day came to be about and what it's supposed to stand for, I really would recommend. You literally can just go to Google and type in Black Love Day, and you'll find an article that tells you about the history of it. But I know they were talking a little bit when they had their romance chat just about how people were incorrectly using the hashtag, and so was Christina C. Jones. She just put out a video. When did she put that video out? It wasn't too long ago. I mean, I usually watch her stuff on like silent. Like, and I finally commented and I told her, I said, I usually watch you like I'm a silent viewer. I usually don't say anything, but because she was just talking about how to like support specifically like, you know, indie black authors, and she in that video she talked a little bit about people incorrectly using um the meaning of black love, and that's not to, it's not to deter, or it's not to put down black authors who write only white characters, or only, you know, they write multicultural or they write interracial. uh I just want to preface that now, because I think that sometimes, once again, you know, having these conversations doesn't mean that you are demeaning someone else. It just means that the conversation needs to happen. And that, for me, that's not Black love. I don't care if there's one character that's Black. I don't care if the author is Black. It's not Black love because the two main characters of that book do not identify as Black. That means it is not Black love. And I don't know whether people get offended by that, but um, veering off a little bit, you've got to understand the historical significance behind why representation of Black love is so important. And it's not to take away from anybody else's representation. This is not a conversation of let's raise our hands and talk about who's the most oppressed group. That's not what's happening here. But it's
Yeah.
important because you have to look at it from a historical standpoint. There's a lot of history behind why seeing positive representation of two Black people in love is very, very important. You can take that all the way back to slavery. We read one book specifically for this live, and we had picked out a second book, and we didn't announce that second book, which Deidra has a copy of it, which is Black Women, Black Love. So we both started reading that book, and I would recommend. I haven't finished it yet, so I don't know if I can say like I recommend it. But what it does in the very beginning is it talks about how from the time that you have colonization and slavery, the whole concept of a Black family no longer existed. That was it. So you had slaves that were taken away from their families. She actually uses the case study of one specific woman who actually was married, had children, and she was forced to leave her husband and her child. And she was brought to America. And in doing that, you not only strip her from her family, you're not only destroying families here in America, you've also destroyed families of those who were living in Africa at that time. So when you think about that, you think about the fact that it wasn't legal for us to be married, which is why you have things like jumping the broom. That's why that exists, because we had certain cultural things that we could do to honor our marriage, but it wasn't legal. There was no legal binding aspect of marriage for Black people. And then you could think at any time, even if you did decide to make that commitment with a partner, you could get sold at any time. Your kids could get sold at any time. Your partner could get sold at any time. So just thinking about that and the traumatic experience of that, and then you keep pressing forward, you think about mass incarceration, you think about just the psychological effects of of slavery itself. A lot of that does play a role, and I'm not saying that, outside factors such as like, I think as a society, we are moving past the whole idea of needing to be married, having to have that legally binding contract. I think as a society, that for all of us is kind of going to the wayside. But you can't negate what has happened to the Black community. And that book specifically looks at how it's been so detrimental to Black women, and how so many of us don't necessarily have that example. We haven't had that example, maybe not physically, and also maybe not in media, because we're not going to necessarily always see positive representations of Black relationships. That wasn't always a constant thing. So that's why it's important. That reinforcement is important. And seeing Black people in love is just as important as seeing any other couple in love. But it's so taboo, I think, a lot of times because of how people view Black people in general. You think of Black women. Do you know how difficult it is and how difficult of a process has been for people to consider Black women to be beautiful? Even
Right.
today, people
Right.
don't think
Right.
that Black women are attractive. I feel like Black women, when it comes to, and this is my personal, I'm not speaking for anybody, I really feel like I take Malcolm X's quote very, very seriously and very, very too hard about, and I'm probably going to misquote the whole thing, but like, the least respected, most abused person in America is a Black woman. Like, I take that quote to heart because we're working in two intersections, being a woman, um, and being Black, and that in itself, y'all, I can't even begin to describe to you how difficult that is. So when people already don't think that Black women are attractive, you have these weird labels that are created for Black men. Black women are over sexualized. So seeing just two Black people in a normal relationship falling in love because society has created all these hazardous stereotypes, it's taboo. And I've had somebody tell me that it was a cultural shock and they didn't mean anything by it. I know that wasn't their intention. Um, it was a cultural shock for them to read a romance with two Black people because it wasn't normal for them. It wasn't normal to be like, oh, two Black people in love, like that happens.
Right. Right.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy. That is crazy.
Weird for me, all of this, just because, and I say weird, and I'm using that term loosely, but like me and my fiance had a conversation earlier in the week about, he was saying that in his neighborhood there wasn't too many couples on the block for him, but for me, I'm thinking about literally everybody that I could see, whether our backyards connected or they're across the street, on my street growing up physically. Almost everybody was married. Like I was seeing married couples with children in a house or whatever. I probably grew up in a lower middle class neighborhood. My parents just celebrated their 40th anniversary September last year. So like all of my friends right now, my two friends that I've had since like diapers, their parents are still married. So it's just kind of weird to me to think that Black people don't, for one, need to see that, portrayed in whatever media, whatever situation. Like for me, that's normal to see Black couples, but I understand that that's not necessarily normal for everybody. It wasn't normal for my fiance, and so, but why? Why isn't that something that we see, like, other than Family Matters and what was that
The
other,
Cosby Show.
The Cosby Show?
Hmm.
We got My Wife and Kids later. Um,
Yeah.
we had
What's
but
the
what
what's
else?
the what's the song? Moving on up.
Oh, The
Um,
Jeffersons. What was it? Was that the name of the
was
show
it
though?
what's the name of the was it the
I don't know,
that's what
but
I think of off the top of
yeah,
my head. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
We got four shows that I can think of that
Fresh
portrayed.
Prince.
What was? Oh,
But
Fresh Prince. Yeah, we had
but
Fresh
then
Prince.
there's some tricky things going on with Fresh Prince with
The way they,
Vivian. Yeah, so
yeah, the
that
way they cast her.
yeah, the way
Yeah,
they cast her. That's there's some issues. There's some issues with that. So
227. Was it 227? That's a different show, wasn't it? And then we had
Lisa Jefferson's.
what was the one with JJ and Janet Jackson? They were married on that show. I forgot the name of it. 227. No, I remember that, but I can't think of it. But we had very limited and very spaced out. It was like we can only have one at a time, and
Mm-hmm.
then it was like you had some colorism going on within the cast
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
almost all those shows.
Yeah, yeah.
So hang
Good
on.
Times was Janet JJ. Good Times. Everybody's saying it's Good Times. You're muted still.
Yeah, Bay tried to come down the stairs on me. He's like he can't hear me talking and didn't know I was live. It was the whole conversation. Yeah, so Good Times. Yeah, that's the one with JJ. And yeah, I mean there was some single parenthood in some of those shows. We had the I forget her name, but there was an aunt or a neighbor that used to come by over there on Good Times. And then Thank you, babe. And yeah. And then you had was it the niece on Family Matters and the aunt that lives with the Winslows?
Mm-hmm.
And then we had the niece with the Cosby Show, who she wasn't really single, but her spouse was gone a lot, so
Mm-hmm.
for the military. Hang on a second.
Family Matters and Fresh Prince both change the original. Yeah, for lighter skin. I think that speaks a lot to even. I think that speaks a lot to going back to that finding Black women attractive. Um, and Black women are only attractive once they're closer to, or they have this proximity to whiteness. Is is what makes Black women attractive, and that in itself is a problem. And you still kind of see, you can see some of that represent. I think it's getting better, but you can kind of see some of that representation too in literature, emphasis on a lighter skin, and I've seen that just in reading some of the descriptions off of the older historicals that I have, which I mean, it kind of is what it is. I can't pull y'all's comments up because I'm not I'm not controlling it. So Missy Britt said she also grew up with Black families um, being the norm, which I I did to an extent. Um, like my mom and my stepdad have been married now. Oh gosh, they've been married for a minute. But I also come from a divorce household too. And so I'm not saying that it's not the norm, because from what I think about, at least like on my dad's, like my biological dad's side of the family, um, I'm used to seeing everybody was together to some capacity. But I just think that it's crazy how um it can be normal for us, but it's abnormal for the rest of the world. And I think that it's what people are buying to, what they buy into in terms of representation of what the Black community is, in opposed to what the reality is.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of stereotypes that are placed on. I mean, I just think about stereotypes placed on Black women. We're loud, we're aggressive, we're ghetto, we're uneducated, which is crazy because it's not the truth. I mean, when you start looking at numbers and statistics, that's not the truth at all. But I think because society as a whole buys into those stereotypes, and they have implicit bias regarding those stereotypes, which is a concept that I still feel like people are kind of nervous about getting into because they feel like it's going to make them a bad person if they have to reveal certain stereotypes that they hold for certain groups, maybe without even knowing it.
Yeah.
Which is why I think some people are so shocked the first time that they read a Black love romance. It throws them off because I think they have implicit bias. Implicit bias does not make you a racist person. It doesn't make you a bad person. We all have implicit bias. But when people leave stuff like that unchecked, you feed into biases, whether you realize it or not. You feed into the stereotypes of, all Black people have is baby mama drama, baby daddy drama. And it's not reality. Like, it's not. Do Black people have kids out of wedlock? Just like everybody else. I mean,
Literally every
it's just
motherfucking everybody else. Excuse my language, but motherfucking everybody else. Statistically, it's impossible for us to have more than anybody else. Like, bro, get your life together.
we have kids out of wedlock the same way that other people have kids out of wedlock. But I think that because, um, for instance, I think that a lot of people have these stereotypes that single Black mothers are on welfare, we don't work. And that's a stereotype that I combat, to this day. Like, no, I am the breadwinner, and no, I don't need a partner to maintain my household at all. I can do it by myself. But people will see you, and people will ask you stuff because they bought into those perceptions. I've had people ask me some crazy shit. If I'm, pre-pandemic, if I was out with my daughter by myself, it was very, very strange things, but that's what ends up happening. If you don't do, and I say this all the time, I feel like if you don't do a lot of self-reflection, if you don't check your own biases, if you don't check your own prejudices, of course it's going to be abnormal for you to think about reading about two Black people in love. I just, for me, it's not bad to, and I'm glad that that person had admitted that to me, because it was like they came to terms with the fact, like, it's because I'm feeding into this stuff. I didn't realize I was feeding into it. And when I read it, it was a culture shock because it wasn't something I was used to seeing. But now I know, I need to be better and be more active about not only reading, but also in my personal life, breaking those stereotypes. And I think that people also have to realize that it's not just about reading two Black people in a romance so you can check off your boxes. This is not a diversity bingo board for you to check off your boxes so you get brownie points and you get to feel good about yourself. You have to genuinely want to do this, because reading about two Black characters and not mulling over your own personal biases and why you have been so hesitant to do so from the get-go, it ain't gonna change it. And that's the part. It has to be a twofold process. And that's my opinion.
Yeah, it really does. We have to, like, in reading, I want to say it was the one that you mentioned last night, about the one that in the single part where it was like Down with the Swirl. I want to say was the name of the title.
Oh yeah. That is, and that's the exact title of that of that. It's
Yeah.
Gone with the. Let me pull it because I have it on my phone.
It says To Swirl or Not to Swirl.
Yeah.
Is the
Swirl
title.
or Not to Swirl. That is that is the Go ahead.
She just said a few things. I think I tabbed a couple of these. She just mentioned a couple of the high profile Black men that were married to Black women. It was Barack Obama and Denzel Washington and Samuel L. Jackson and Jay-Z and Boris. Did you say Cujo? Is that how you pronounce his last name?
That's how I say his last name.
And and Grant Hill, to name a few. And this book was published in 2013, y'all. So some of the references are a little dated, but and I just thought that was something else. And then in the same page, she talked about Sammy Davis Jr. and Quincy Jones, Tiger Woods, and Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte, all of which are also prominently celebrity or famous Black men who didn't marry Black women, and how we sort of feel about that. I don't know. I wouldn't say as a culture, but like just maybe as Black women, because this is a Black woman who wrote this particular article. But yeah, I definitely thought, okay, I do have something internally that makes me think, okay, why didn't Quincy Jones marry a Black woman? Is there something about Black women that he just can't get jiggy with? The same way some people can't get jiggy with interracial relationships. I don't know. It did make me be reflective of why I feel that way, or why I thought that about that particular high profile Black man.
So y'all, the book that we're talking about, book that Deidra, can you hold it up? So the book that Deidra and I did end up reading was Where Did Our Love Go?, which was a compilation of essays by different individuals, in which they it was split into three categories. The first part was talking about single people. The second part was those who are currently married, and the last section was about individuals who are divorced. And it really, the different perspectives that Black people have in terms of their relationship, in terms of finding love based on their current as Facebook, their current status.
Mm-hmm.
And how they've been influenced, how society has influenced them, their perspectives on it. And a lot of them were very varying. I'm just thinking about even just the first part in the single section, how there were so many different aspects of how people viewed Black love. And the one that you talked about, To Swirl or Not, or whatever the title is, was probably one that I found most interesting, because I feel like that is a heavy conversation that no one ever wants to have. No one ever no one ever wants to have a conversation about that, because I think that it becomes kind of walking on eggshells, where people are like, well, are you opposed to interracial romance or interracial relationships? And I kind of used this example last night in the live, where I said, I've seen people who feel some type of way about Black women who have said, like, I mean, for lack of better terms, you took one of the last good ones that we have. And
Mm-hmm.
people who are on the receiving end of that being really, really upset and hurt, which I do understand those feelings. They're very, very valid feelings. But the words that I like to use is, it's not, when you receive statements like that, it's talking about it and discussing it is not justification, it's explanation. Like, where are those feelings coming from? Why are there people in the Black community, specifically Black women? Because it's true, Black women, when you think about just percentages overall about the number of Black people that are in interracial relationships, okay, even if it is a small number, people say, like, okay, yeah, like only 30-40% of Black people are in interracial relationships, right? When you pull that stat down again and you look at the numbers, you're going to see that more Black men are in interracial relationships than Black women. And I always find that interesting. And I think that there are quite a few Black women out there who are like, I mean, what is wrong with us? But I think that goes back to history. Black women have not been considered important. And I'm not saying on an individual basis, I'm not saying a 24/7 thing, but I'm saying in a lot of instances, because I just, as a historian going back to slavery, think about the way in which Black women were treated by slave masters,
Yeah.
used, abused, raped, and nobody could do anything about it. Black men couldn't come to
Nothing.
her rescue and help her. Then she had to deal with the wrath of the slave master's wife, and there was nobody there to help her. And I think a lot of Black women then were holding out, trying to salvage relationships then, and they still are hoping and holding out hope for possibly ending up with a Black man, which is why now you have a lot of conversation going on about Black women need to just stop.
Yeah.
Like, stop holding out, stop hoping, stop waiting, because it just may not happen. Statistically, thinking about the number of Black women versus the number of Black men, we outnumber, a lot of Black women, which is why that last article pissed me off so much, because we are outpacing.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are
We are.
outpacing. Um, it's kind of hard to continue to, but I understand why. And in
Mm-hmm.
reading some of those articles, or some of those essays, I understand why people hold out. Um, they hold out for a Black partner. And, she made a really good point in her essay, where she was saying, because she was pro
Mm-hmm.
interracial relationship, but she
Yeah.
made an interesting point where she said, um, you know, what is the reasoning behind it? And I can't remember if I read
Mm-hmm.
it somewhere else or if it was in her essay, where she talked about the psychology behind it, the psychology of white women being unattainable and being told this is what you can't have. So
Oh, that
now
was
that you,
another article. It wasn't in this one.
okay, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
didn't know if it was in that one, but
Mm-hmm.
the psychology that can be involved behind that, like, because she did make a statement, I believe, where she said, like, in are you in this relationship because you genuinely, like, you're in love and you're
Mm-hmm.
in this relationship, or is there a different motive behind it?
Yeah.
And people have to understand that that doesn't negate your relationship or invalidate your relationship, but there are people who tokenize being
Mm-hmm.
in relationships like that. There are people
Yep.
who will tokenize dating outside of their race because it's a fetish, which is
It's a
Black
fetish.
women have such a difficult time with that because and Black women who've been in interracial relationship or have dated outside their race will tell you that
Yes.
sometimes it can be difficult because you feel like there's certain things that get said and certain things you've done. It's like, am I a fetish for you or are you really genuinely interested? And I know that
Yes.
for me personally, it was hard going to a PWI and
Mm-hmm.
going out at night and having white men be all over you because they're plastered, knowing that come the break of dawn, you meant nothing in the world. So it's just an interesting conversation to kind of had.
Yeah, I went to a PWI too, but I didn't really go to very many parties that were
Mm-hmm.
mixed. I didn't, not really. But when we did go out, like to a club or something that wasn't a party for school, it was that situation where, you know, I never hardly ever went out by myself, but like, let's say I went to the bathroom or something by
Mm-hmm.
myself, and there was a line, and it's right by the bar, you got a bunch of drunk white guys in line hitting on you or whatever, or hitting on you and your girls. It does kind of make you think, okay, is this just something fun that they're doing tonight, or is he like actually trying to,
Like
you know what
genuinely
I'm saying?
interested.
Like,
Yeah,
is he
yeah,
actually
yeah.
whatever? So I have dated a white guy before,
As
for
have I.
yeah, like maybe like for about 4 or 5 months or so.
Yeah, it was a hot minute.
Yeah, it
That was
was
a hot minute.
something. It was after college too, so I don't
Yeah,
know. That was an experience. I had fun.
yeah.
Like I've had good and bad experiences with not only black men but white men and
Hmm.
one Mexican guy. So
Yeah, I
I
did
don't
a
know.
Puerto Rican guy before. It actually was good.
Yeah,
It was just distance. Distance wouldn't.
yeah. It was a
Yeah,
distance things too. So yeah, it was.
yeah.
You Are you seeing this? I was just laughing at them talking about one of the Mari.
Oh,
Sister's good.
um,
Tamara.
Tamara,
Yeah, it's so funny to me.
listen. I think, but people don't understand. Like, I don't know why saying that one, like for us to say or proudly say something like Black love matters, Black
Hmm.
love is important.
Yeah.
It turns into so you think that interracial, multicultural, white love it's not it doesn't mean that. It just means that
Hmm.
when you have a group that has not had adequate representation, they haven't been, you know, the positive aspects of Black love hasn't been shown, it then you have to tell people it matters just as much as anyone else. It doesn't mean that it matters more or that it invalidates someone or like, I'm gonna look at someone and say, oh, if you're not married to a Black person, I don't know, like and that's not what the conversation is about. And I know that people look at stuff like this and that's what they think. They think that we're telling them that, especially I feel like sometimes um in the booktube community, it's kind of like, well, why is this more important? It's not that, and it's more, it just needs to be as important as anything else that you look at.
That really irritates me when somebody acts like because I'm saying what my relationship is important. Excuse me. It means that what your relationship is unimportant. I hate when people do that.
Yeah.
It really is upsetting because I want those people to like ask themselves, why do you hear that when I say that
Mhm. Mhm.
my relation? Why is that what you hear? Because I did not say that. That's what you
Yeah.
heard though.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Comment white boys love to come spitting that I love chocolate game. It's so disrespectful.
Yeah.
That's so disrespectful. It's so disrespectful. That is just not the way to approach a situation. So I have a random question. Just literally, I mean, just this way off course. But since we are a part of the booktube community, how do you feel about, and just speaking about romance, how do you feel about people who say things like, I just read what I read?
I think that's so lazy. I think that's a cop out. And I don't want to say that I don't want to like shame people for reading what they reading or pick up, but
Mhm.
like at the same time, you have to be like, I guess maybe it's jealousy that people get to be so lackadaisical about what they get to pick up or what they maybe even spend their money on or spend their time on or talk about um on booktube. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like it kind of makes me upset that I don't say I have to, but I put so much effort into thinking about what I'm picking up.
Mhm.
Um, just just because, not even because I care what people think about it, but because I want to be reading a certain type of,
Mhm.
like, I don't want to be triggered either in my hobby again. Like I don't want to be triggered um in reading a book by maybe a non-black author, and I do read books by non-black authors all the time for sure for romance. But
Mhm.
like specifically with romance, there are some of those microaggressions that come up, especially when they're describing people as far as trying to get a physical appearance
Mhm.
description in there. They can use words, especially coming from a non-black person, that can be a bit triggering, like
Mhm.
always compared to food in some way, like chocolate or peanut butter, caramel, or like literally their other
Mocha.
brown thing, like there are so many
Well, so
other
crazy. It's not like we describe white people as, oh, they were just as pale as rice.
they're whipped cream color or a motherfucking cloud colored person. What, like, come on now, like
Is yeah. I think I get kind of heated about that a little bit because I think sometimes and I'm not speaking of anybody in particular.
yeah,
I think sometimes we can label ourselves as experts in um in certain genres and just saying because we're here talking about romance. It bothers me sometimes. I think if someone is considered an expert in a genre in romance and they don't read it all,
yeah,
because how are you an expert in something where you refuse to touch everything? I
yeah,
don't. To me, that concept doesn't make sense because I have heard people in the romance community who have said, I pick up what I pick up. And I'm like, and then it's like, oh, yeah, like I'm the person to come to for recommendations. No, the hell you're not, because you're the person to come to for recommendations if you want to see two white people in love. I mean, let's keep it. I mean, for me, I think it's all about transparency. Like, let's be honest and let's stop parsing words here and stop pretending that what we see is not what we're seeing. We're using this coded language where it's like, no, you love to read. If you love to read romance just about white people and being in love, say it and own it.
say it
Don't beat
with
around the
full
bush.
chest.
Don't pretend. If you only enjoy romance that features interracial people, you only enjoy romance that is non-human plus a human, like be open about it, but don't walk around and say that you're an expert in this genre or that you know it all or that you're the person to come to for recommendations, because you're not giving a broad representation of everything. And like you said, I'll touch anything once. I
Yep,
done read about aliens screwing humans. I've read
yep,
about white people being. I've read about interracial relationships. Multicultural relationships.
mm-hmm.
Queer relationships. I've done it all. I'm willing to touch it all at any point. But for this continuous um, kind of narrative that we have people within our community that are experts who don't indulge in everything really bothers me, because what ends up happening, and I say this and I keep saying because I'm going to say this for booktube, because we do have people who blog, Twitter, Instagram, who are really really pushing on their platforms, but I can only speak for booktube when I say it bothers me, because what ends up happening is that everybody starts recommending the same damn romance book, the same books the same books continuously, and you never get exposure to anything different because you keep watching the same people reading the same stuff who claim they're experts on romance and don't read anything outside their own experience. I don't understand, how can you live your life and only want to see just your experience? Now I'm going to advocate for Black romance because I don't feel like we see it enough. You're absolutely right. I forgot I put that on Twitter. Not you calling me out. I did. I read a romance about a Black woman who went to a beach and screwed a Black mermaid. I mean,
yeah.
like I just feel like, you know, if you are gonna brand yourself as something, um, if you're gonna brand yourself as being a spokesperson for a genre, you should be able to talk about it all.
Yeah.
And what I was saying before is that I am going to push for Black love romance a lot more because it's not seen as much in our community. And even it's starting to, once again, it's starting to cycle, because what's ending up happening now is that you're going to have people who are only going to read Christina C. Jones, Katrina Jackson, and Alexandria House, which is fine because I love them all.
Yeah.
But I think the hiccup for me sometimes is that I'm loving that they're getting the spotlight that they deserve, because they sure as hell deserve it. But I hope it doesn't become a thing where people, or what I believe happens is that people don't want to look. And I'm sorry if and I'll take the heat for it, Deidra, but I'm sorry if I offend anybody. I'm not sorry. But I will take the heat for it. I think there's an element of laziness.
Yeah.
I think there's an element of laziness that's wrapped into this whole thing, because unless it's being given to you on a platter, unless someone lays it out, unless your favorite big white booktuber is telling you about these Black love romances, you ain't gonna search for it. You're not gonna go looking for it. You're not gonna read it. So unless you have, unless you have this person telling you, oh, I read, and I saw it happen, and I think that's why it pissed me off, because I saw a big romance booktuber start reading Danielle Allen. And I said, oh, I'm like, but this individual also is trying to expand their horizons. But you're starting to see stuff where, because she recommended it, that's the only thing that people are going to read, and they're not going to go past that, because unless she goes past that point, so then it becomes, we're dependent upon bigger people who are not necessarily Black pushing Black romance, which they're not always going to, because that's not their main focus. We're dependent upon them to push it out to their followers. It's just, it could end up being a vicious cycle if people don't get on the internet and open up a tab and just Google.
Yeah. There's lots of lists that you could go to on Goodreads in particular.
Yes.
I don't know how to navigate StoryGraph for those type of lists
I don't
yet.
either.
I know that they probably do exist. Like whatever that challenges part is that I still haven't quite figured out, I'm sure that somebody has already figured out how to work it. I just haven't figured it out for myself yet. But yeah, I think you're right, and that's why I said what I said earlier. I do think that a lot of it is laziness, and then it doesn't help that you do have to go like 8 pages deep on all of these romance websites, because we're still in the panorama, so we're not going to the brick and mortar stores like that, and most of your currently right now your Black love stories are independently published through Amazon or through their individual websites. So there's also an access problem too, if you ask me. And then especially if you want to break it down into all the little subgenres within that, like when you have the street lit and you have the
Shauna just said I want to find a street lit book.
Yeah. Like, I mean, what have you read already?
Exactly. That's the that's the key. That is the key.
Yeah.
Heather
So yeah.
Heather Heather made a good point up.
So I'm up
Um,
here.
Now Heather reads a lot of Black love romance. Like
Hmm.
Heather consumes a lot of Black love romance. Some that I didn't even know. Heather be out there searching. But yeah, she made a good point there by saying too, Rilsey Adams go deep. That now
Yeah.
is like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
and it's not that these authors don't deserve the respect that they're getting, because damn it, they
Yeah.
do. But I think that we have to kind of challenge ourselves to say, oh, you know what? I like this book. I'm liking the feel. I'm digging this. I can do two Black characters. What can I find on my damn own? Not
Yeah.
waiting for, people um who are in the romance community to start pushing out to you what they have read, because it doesn't help, because then it'll be another couple of years before someone else gets their respect. It just,
Yeah.
like, for instance, um you know how much I love Nicole Falls.
Yeah.
I mean, I put her up there with my enjoyment of because Alexandria House has been really rocking my world lately. But Nicole Falls, like, kind of like broke that barrier for me when it came to Black love indie published books like that. She's the one who really, between her and Beloved, I don't know who came first,
Yeah.
but I don't feel like she gets her respect. But it's almost like until someone in the romance community with a large following drops her name, it's not going
Hmm.
to happen, and
Hmm.
it's so unfortunate, because it's like she puts out some really good stuff. I think she puts out some really, really great stuff. But until someone, is like, oh, yeah, I read Nicole Falls, and it's like, oh, well, now I want to check her out. And it's like, why don't you just open up a
Yeah.
tab, man? Just open up a tab, man. Just, I don't know.
I wanted you to answer this question because I had to ask you at one point when we were talking about doing this.
Yeah.
What? How would you answer this? Because I think I mean, the way in my mind, it's the same.
In my
But
mind, it's the same as well, but
yeah.
I'm not sure if there is a distinct, because see, even from a librarian perspective, it's kind of hard, because a lot of that stuff is still marketed as urban, which, that terminology, depending upon who you talk to, is, people don't like it. Some people are fine with it. Like, I know at the library we market it as urban,
Hmm.
um, but then I have become more accustomed to hearing it described as street lit. Now, I've heard it
Yeah.
called hood lit, but I feel like those terms, to me, um, are used so interchangeably. I don't know if there's a legitimate difference between the two of them. I really genuinely don't. Um, because I've heard urban, street lit, hood lit all used to describe the same stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, generally, I just feel like when I think about street lit, hood lit, or whatever, I think they're a lot grittier than what you would read from, your contemporary black um black love romance writers. They're good though. But Ashley Antoinette
Yeah.
is a good place to start.
Yeah. I haven't read a Quan book in so long, but from what I remember, yes.
Mhm.
Um,
I haven't
I
read
think
Nikki
those
Turner.
those words all in my mind mean the same thing, but I think hood gives has maybe a slightly more negative connotation than the other
Mhm.
two words, street
Mhm.
and urban. And then urban, it just, like you said, it depends on who you're asking and who's
Mhm.
around when you ask.
Mhm.
Because that word also can have a negative connotation.
But we're gonna have a whole separate conversation about that, and I'm sure,
Mm-hmm.
because for every session that we're doing, we are looking at articles or primary um, primary information related to the topic that we're discussing. So if there's any logistical reasoning as to where the terminology came from and what's the difference between them, I'm sure we'll come across it somewhere. But like I said, I've in my experience, especially in my librarian experience, I know we label them as urban, but I have patrons who come in and say, where are your hood books? And I know, I mean,
Yeah.
instantaneously, I know they're talking about the urban section, you
Yeah.
know. Um,
Yeah.
Media wise, I've seen more street lit use as a terminology. So I mean, that's what I said. Yeah, I don't know if there's really a clear difference between the two. And Heather, I wouldn't say urban falls under romantic suspense. Um, it could have suspense elements, but a lot of times too, I feel like street lit romance is not necessarily the focal point of the story itself. I think that romantic elements happen, and using the term romantic, depending upon what story you're reading, um, can be hit or
Be
miss.
loose.
The term could be loosely used. I mean, we just read what did we just read by Ashley Antoinette? Moth to a Flame. We just read that
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, last
That's very
year.
loose. I don't know how. I mean,
I
it kind
wouldn't.
of was. It had some
It
romantic
has suspense.
elements.
It has suspense. It has suspense elements to it.
Hmm.
Um, Definitely a lot of suspense elements tied up, especially towards the ending of that book.
Hmm.
But I wouldn't necessarily consider that to be not necessarily. I wouldn't consider that to be romantic suspense at all. Like, because a lot of that book, there, romance is very, very loose, very, very loose term that I would use in describing that book.
Um, this was. I haven't read too many where I thought the love and the Christianity element was not real preachy. I guess was the best way to say that. Like
Mm-hmm.
very very preachy in the ones that I have seen, or it was a little too scandalous for my taste. Like when we were talking about um a pastor and such. Like I read one from an old series from Brenda Jackson. I think she may still be writing in that series. But it's like The Preacher's Wife or something like that. Um, it's the name of the title. There's one with a similar title from Carl Weber, like somebody
Mm-hmm.
mentioned earlier. He has a series where there's like, and it's not, I wouldn't say it's a Christian fiction book
Mm-hmm.
at all per se, but it is set in a church following a pastor and people in higher up in the church. So, I didn't really care for those, but that's a personal, subjective thing. Other people might. I haven't read other than one that me and Britt tried to read um a little while ago, like the end of last year, I think. It was a Christian romance book. Um and I didn't like how that one. I don't know. I don't even want to. I don't even want to say the title of it, but I didn't like that how that was portrayed either. So I don't know how they're doing now. Both of those books were older, or all those books I mentioned, or were either published late '90s
Uh-huh.
or early 2000s. So I don't know how they're doing now.
I read one recently that
How
was a
you?
historical romance, um, Christian fiction, and what I knew what I was getting myself into, going into it, more inspirational. Um, I don't read a lot of inspirational romance because I feel like I have conflicting views on some of the content. Even if, and I just actually put a new one on hold at the library that features a kind of a blended family type of situation between a black couple, but it is a Christian fiction or labeled by Harlequin as an inspirational fiction. And um, for the one that I just read in January, It's not so much where it's like, oh, there's not like explicit sex scenes on page that's going to bother me. I need smut. Like, I mean, I enjoy it, but it doesn't have to be there. Um, it was the author's perspective of Christianity that didn't work for me. And that's
Mm-hmm.
always tricky with me, is
Mm-hmm.
that because first of all, I mean, this is kind of going off a tangent, but just so you get an understanding, for me, I don't label myself as a Christian. I consider myself to be spiritual only because there are some things with the 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 institution of Christianity that I do not agree with. And that for me is always going to be a tricky thing to personally navigate because I don't always
Mm-hmm.
agree with certain moral or ethical things that people will insert. Specifically in this book, it was a mother who um, it wasn't on page, but you could tell just from the text beating around the bush that the mother took them to church. The pastor clearly was a pedophile. He sexually assaulted the girl, and
Mm-hmm.
her mother did nothing, which, I mean, I've seen that in books before, but it was the internal dialogue that the author created for the character in which she said, well, God basically tells me that I need to honor my mother and my father, and I love my mom. So, and it's like, see, I can't get down with that because
I
at the
can't
end of the
get jiggy
day,
with that. No.
I can't, I don't believe that. Like, her mother was fucked up
Mm-hmm.
for doing that. And
Mm-hmm.
to use religion as a way to excuse that behavior. So for me, I don't really touch, um, unless it's inspirational romance where it's faith based and it's just about clean content. I will pick
Mm-hmm.
that up, but it depends on the author and how much they delve into it. But some people, I think, and that it is their right to do that, but for me personally, I can't, I can't get you with that at all. I can't do
I
that.
just had too many like real world and real life experiences with stuff like that. Since again, I don't want to trigger myself in my hobby. So I just try to stay I try to stay away
Yeah,
from that just because it is a topic that or it is something that the author has to do. It's just too much working against the author for the most part. For me personally, in
yeah,
my mind, that I
yeah,
can't, it's just not fair for me to pick up those type of books,
yeah,
really. Um,
yeah. It was the one on it was two little girls on the cover. It's the same one.
mhm.
Yeah, I saw that my library was going to purchase a copy of it, so I went ahead and put it on hold because it looked, from the description and stuff, it looked interesting. I see a question. Do you see it?
Oh, I missed it. Where is it at? Oh, this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
You
Uh,
want to go first, or you want me to go first?
I think I'll go first because I know you're gonna have the actual right answer.
No, 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 no.
But for me, what I have noticed is that for the biggest difference between an indie and a traditional is that traditionally published romances have to cater to whatever that publisher thinks is marketable and palatable and all of those ables that indies don't necessarily have to deal with. And for better or for worse, uh I just personally don't see traditional published books scratching the itch that I need scratched for black romance as far as that goes. What do you think, Ashley? What's the
No,
difference?
I agree. And this is not just only talking about black love romance. I think that a lot of people who are in just the romance industry who are indie published will kind of say exactly what Deidra was saying, that um you do, there are certain guidelines and stuff that your editor and your publisher are going to want you to follow. And sometimes I know there's one, I forget who I read the article on. I was actually going down a rabbit hole of how KU Works, for paying their authors and stuff like that. Only because Christina C. Jones was kind of talking about that a little bit in her video, and financially what it looks like for them. And I ended up stumbling upon an article where someone was talking about that they got the opportunity to become traditionally published, but they decided that that was just going to be, it just wasn't an avenue that they wanted to take. They did it, but from the time that they started writing the book, up until the time that they had finished the book, they wrote the book and finished it. Let me correct myself. It took a year, even after they had finished the book, to get the book out. Onto shelves because of so much hands being in the work saying this is not going to be marketable, this is not going to work. I think there's a lot that goes on, and hopefully I'll get the opportunity to do a little bit more reading in terms of like the publishing side of stuff just in general. But I think we don't realize how many hands, once you are picked up by a publisher, how many hands go into saying whether this content is going to work, this content is not going to work, you need to add this, you need to take away that. So it extends a period of time, and a lot of indie authors feel like it's not even worth it. By the time you look at the financial aspect of it, it's not worth it in the long run. I also feel like the avenue for now specifically taking it to Black love, Black authors who are writing Black love romance, you have to think about how publishing as a whole looks right now. Okay. I'm working specifically, I'm not going to even talk about adults, but I'm just going to pull an organization that looks at, it does. I think it does look at numbers as a whole. It's a group called the CCBC that pulls statistics on publishing every year. And you can see in publishing as a whole that the number of Black authors getting published on the grand scale, it's not a lot. And to think that you would have to wait and go through rejection after rejection after rejection. Some people are like, I'm not waiting for y'all to give me the green light on saying that my story is good enough for you to tell. They want to go ahead and they're going to put their stories out for the world to see, because it's a hassle trying to even get your foot in the door. And then I think that even with romance, it's in itself the amount of problems that the romance community has in publishing. Think about the RWA and the bullshit that they just had went through with the racism, which is so crazy because a Black woman founded the RWA, and people in their racist as fuck. Like, it don't make no sense. It don't make no sense whatsoever. Like, no sense. Not a nickel, dime, a quarter.
None.
But nobody wants to. You have people who are gatekeeping, and at that point, people are like, "I will never go." And I've seen Black indie authors tweet, "I refuse to go traditionally published. I just am not going to do it because it is too much of a hassle. It's too stressful. They're requiring too much. They're going to tell you have to do this, you have to do that." And then think about, unless you're an OG, like Brenda Jackson, Beverly Jenkins, Rochelle Ayers, or who is it? Rhonda Tate's Billings. Is it Billings? Billingsley? I always
Oh yeah,
tear her name up.
Donna Hill.
Yeah, unless you're like one of these established people, I feel like it's hard to get your foot in the door with two Black characters as your main focus. Because a lot of who you're seeing hit the ground running right now, like Alyssa Cole, Talia Hibbert, Rebecca Weatherspoon, those people who are getting these deals, their characters are not both Black. They're and it doesn't mean that they're not writing good stories, but you have to start to question in your mind, why are certain books getting pushed with certain narratives that do not have Black characters? Like, it's a lot of it's and nobody wants to necessarily come out and say it. Nobody wants to come out and talk about it because they feel, oh yeah, well, you're invalidating something. No, you're not. It's just the reality of the situation. All that stuff you got to take into consideration. And a lot of Black indie writers are like, I'm not putting up with the bullshit.
Yep.
Because if this is what I want to write two Black characters in love. I don't have time to wait on publishing to catch up on what they should already be doing, which I respect them for that because, they put a lot of work and effort into their stuff. And monetarily, I mean, I don't know. I'm not in their pockets, but I can only assume like how much these first of all, these women put out books like this.
Like, yeah.
And I can understand why, because for the longest time, I didn't even realize how KU works. So
Mm-hmm.
KU, you get paid based on number of pages read.
Mm.
So that's why KU was having that issue a while back where authors were abusing the system and padding their books, or they would create hyperlinks that would send you to the end of the book so it would look like people had read the books and they hadn't, And Christina C. Jones was talking about the fact that, they know what they're getting into when they sign up. Like, no one's forcing their hand or anything. Like, when they sign up, they know what they're getting themselves into. But I have to wonder sometimes, this is why they put out so much content. Like, Be Love has a backlist of over 100 books. 100 books. 100 books, y'all. I think Alexandra Warren just passed 75. Nicole Falls is up there too. It's really interesting. Once again, I can't put up y'all's comments, so I'm just gonna say it out loud. Heather, you said I find traditionally published to be much more formulaic than indie. Yeah, I think sometimes once you figure out a certain pattern or structure of some, you can kind of figure them out. I think the ones that make it big are the ones that kind of do things a little differently. And I mean, I don't mind formula, but sometimes it gets kind of repetitive. Harlequin has guidelines you have to follow, like couples in their stories have to meet by the end of chapter 1. Yeah, I didn't realize that, and I don't know. I probably heard it from you, knowing just because I know that you talk about a lot of this stuff a lot of time on your Twitter. I didn't realize that until last year that Harlequin actually had guidelines set up that people have to follow, which does keep them in a very, very very narrow box in terms of what they're able to put out content wise. So I mean, I understand. I understand why people just don't want to go that route. In Pages of Sid, you said interracial romances are more marketable. They're considered more marketable.
I just saw that. I lost it. There it is.
Yeah, they are. They are considered more marketable, and once again, and I know I keep saying it, but I feel like I have to keep saying it because I know that people are going to feel some type of way about it. But it's the truth. You have to understand, like, why is that? Why is that more marketable, or why is that seen as more acceptable than seeing two Black people who are in a relationship together? I can't tell you. I mean, outside of Harlequin, because I know Harlequin does. I have two that I'm looking at, like Reese Ryan, um, um, Sanithia Williams. There are a handful of people that are making their rounds with two Black characters, but it's not as big. Like, you're not gonna find two Black characters in it's on the level of Talia Hibbert if they're not already established like Beverly Jenkins. So it's not taking away, and I always want to remind people, it's not taking away from their ability, because let me tell you, I read both Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and Take a Hint, Danny Brown. I was about to say Danica Brown, but it's definitely Take a Hint, Danny Brown. Because I like that name. I like Danica. I think that's a pretty name. And I enjoyed them both. I've read Beverly Jenkins. I've read both historical and her contemporary, which her contemporary series, funny enough, gets no love, which is crazy, because as much as people read Beverly Jenkins and her historical romances, they would enjoy her contemporary because the characters in her Blessings novels are descendants of her characters from her historicals. So, just just stuff like that. Yeah, it is. I do think interracial is considered more marketable, and it is what it is. I mean, we see that.
I didn't get to highlight the one you were talking about uh when I had to go away for a second,
No,
but
no, no, it's fine. It's fine. There's no
um
written. Black and I just still find it. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I think because they have a loyal fan base, though.
yeah. They
You,
have to they have to build all of that they're on their own. They don't have the publishing house to make the marketing scheme, to make the social media blast and all of that. So I think that they I think that they are a little bit more fruitful in that they get to have their niche audience and don't have to worry about
hmm
necessarily
hmm
appealing to the masses per se.
Miss WC, yes, they do. Her main character in her Blessings novel is over the age of 50 because it starts off with her um, divorcing her husband, I believe, getting a settlement and going out west and basically buying one of the last areas that was a free town for blacks. So yeah, it does, but they're good. I mean, because she's just Beverly Jenkins is, as much as people consider her. I guess what I'm trying to say is of um, the irony of it all is that people will say Miss Bev is an OG, but they only pick up her historical romances when
Yeah.
that's not just all that she's done. That's not all that she is. And
Hmm.
sometimes it worries me because I think that people are framing her in this box or in some ways almost tokenizing her. So she is that Black love historical romance writer that they can have under their belt when events come up or when people want to talk about historical romance and they want to be diverse in the historical romance that they're talking about. And they're not looking at her in her totality, which is why I'm always so mind blown when I see people have conversations. And as soon as you bring up stuff like she's done contemporary stuff too, y'all, like she's done
Hmm.
contemporary books outside of the Blessing series. And every time I hear her name get brought up, it's like, oh yeah, like I read this historical, I read this one, and I'm like, but that's not all that she's done. That's not all that she is. Look at her
Hmm.
in totality. Look at her as a whole person, and don't put her in a box and tokenize her for your own personal reasons, which sometimes I feel like is happening
Hmm.
because people want to use it for their own selfish benefit.
Hmm. Yeah. But I
Yeah,
mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword too because we don't, even though she does more than that, we don't know who else does that. So
yeah,
we kind of use her as a crutch. I would say personally. But also I'm not super interested in historical romance as one of the ones I kind of look for. It's not really
yeah.
my
Is
I
that
don't
your
care that
arena?
much. Like, it's not, but that's not to say it's not important. You know what I'm saying? It's not to say
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Beverly Jenkins deserves to be tokenized in that way either.
hmm
So, you know, I just want people to do a little bit more, than what they're,
Yeah,
not to say that what they're doing now, but by and large, I just want people to understand that we didn't just get here as far as Black authors writing Black love stories. They're
hmm
out there, and it's more than just the ones that you hear. Always, usually, you hear about one, there's usually at least 10 more that are just as good that
hmm
nobody is talking about. And other than romance, that counts for a lot of other genres, but specifically romance.
hmm
Um, there's just a lot out there.
Yeah, I find that kind of ironic. Miss WOC's reader to comment about all of a sudden the romance community loves Stacey Abrams now, um,
Mm.
and it's almost
Mhm.
like it's because it was made obvious. It goes back to the whole comment about not being lazy. It's like, oh my,
Mhm.
all of a sudden, we love Stacey Abrams and we love, but that those books have existed,
Mhm.
but because they had to be placed in your lap. I mean, yes, it was written under a pen name, but it's amazing how it's sometimes our community will push things as if this is the first time that it's ever happened.
Yeah.
Like, this is an awful habit. Like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I read this romance with 2 Black people in it. It's
Yeah.
like, girl.
Where have you been, fam? I know, like, I just thought about how many people have said to me within the time that we announced that we were doing this that they've like read for the first time a romance with a Black, not even necessarily Black love, but like with one Black character. And I'm like, how did you get? I know they meant that for me to feel good about my influence on them. And I don't mean to, I'm not trying to say anything bad, but it's just like, how do you get this far knowing me? How did you
Mhm.
get this far knowing or not thinking to pick up a book where the character looked like me um, in it? Like, how?
I- But I think there are people um who are willfully like they're just not doing it. I see
Willfully?
people get like just because I
Does it go
talk
back to
about
they don't find them attractive? They don't find us attractive?
I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is, but like for instance, how do you read and you could read this how you want to read it. Y'all could feel how you want to feel at this point. How do you read 700 books a year romance and not one has any type of not none like none no black no nothing absolutely how
But I bet there's an alien in there or a werewolf or
how like how sway how are you reading 700 plus books a year and you brag about this shit now? How do you do that and you don't read not one book with 2 Black people in it?
yeah, that's pretty willful.
No, that's that you willfully doing that shit, man. And I think I had said this in I had said this before where I feel like I'm happy that we're using this as an opportunity. Um, I'm glad that we're using this as an opportunity to carve out our own space because I'm tired of trying to get people to listen. Those who want to listen will listen. Those who want to learn with us as we learn will learn. It's
Hmm.
no longer about trying to convince y'all because for me, it's one of those situations too where how do you see, how do you hop on board in a conversation like this? Um, and you're proponent, like you're advocating. Yeah, I want to make sure I'm reading diversely. I want to yes, I did. I want to I want to read more diversely. I want to read more books about Black love, but you won't check your friends. You won't.
Hmm.
That's why I said something, and I stand by what I say sometimes. Like some of y'all really don't have friends. Like you really don't have friends. There's no way you have friends. Um, because how do you watch your friends, people in your community, continuously read hundreds? Not like you reading 50 books. Not like you reading. I even give you 75. You reading over 500 books a year, and not one book contains 2 Black people at all. Not at all. Like that's just being that's so damn ignorant. Like I don't even, which is why I think part of me was like wanting to be a part of the romance community here on BookTube, and then the next part of me is like, nah, fuck that shit.
Yeah,
Nah,
yeah.
I'm good. I'm good. I would rather not. Like I talk to who I talk to, and that's how I'm gonna keep it. But I'm
Hmm.
tired of trying to navigate romance booktube and communicate and trying to advocate going to people's live shows and literally dropping recommendations in the chat only for y'all to keep doing the shit that you've been doing. Like, I'm not wasting my time and my energy because it's like talking to a brick wall. It's talking to a brick wall about it. And yeah, I agree. Romance Instagram is a different ball game. Romance Instagram is on their shit. Like they have been. They're on point.
And been on point.
And been
That's why
on
it's so upsetting about BookTube.
Yes.
Because it's like, you know, I mean, there's not much crossover, but like the ones that do cross over, it's like, how do you missing this part of the same platform that you're on that side? Like, I don't get it. It's upsetting. And like, I think you're right about some of it being willful.
Yeah. Yeah, Chloe, like, I don't know why BookTube can't have that energy. And it's so sad that any given day, like, I can go on Instagram and there's Instagrammers, there are book bloggers who have Instagram, who are like doing the damn thing. Like, I mean, I feel like a complete nobody. When I get on Instagram, I'm like, like, I don't know what I'm talking about. Like, because these people are really like, they're fighting for and advocating so hard, for Black love and just inclusion and diversity as a whole in the romance community. And it's like, I get on BookTube, but I'm like, it's like crickets. I'm like, what are y'all like? What is going on here? What exactly is going on? I don't understand what the issue is. I don't get what is so abnormal. Like you said, you could read about an alien fucking a human, but you can't read about two humans. You can read. I
don't get it.
You can read about all types of taboo shit, wild shit, but you can't pick up a book about two Black people. I'm not knocking what anybody reads, but if you can go to that level and read all of that, why is it so strange for you to pick up a book about two Black people? I don't get that. There's no logic behind it. No logic. I mean, literally, I have seen it all. The recommendations. You want BDSM. You want this. You want that. You want aliens. You want daddy kink. You want this, and I read it all. I'm into it all too. But it's the same videos where I'm like, not like none of these recommendation books do you see anybody that has any melanin whatsoever. No melanin. And I'm like, but you're wrong. But then that's the kicker. But you're romance experts.
Houseway. Let's see. I was answering a question. Did you freeze, Ashley?
No, I'm still here. I was reading. I'm looking at pages of Sid's last comment.
Or Black authors.
But what about Black love? How did that get lost in the shuffle? Or the Black authors? They do talk about white characters. Child, that's a whole nother conversation. That's a whole nother conversation because
I don't know.
It ain't nothing wrong. And you know what I'm saying? Once again, ain't nothing wrong with it. Ain't nothing wrong with it. It's not a knocking on what you like, but I mean, what is the justification? What are you afraid of? What are you scared of seeing?
What is your implicit bias that has you not or maybe even your internalized racism that you that's got you not wanting to see yourself
Because
in.
that's a thing. Because that's a thing. I
It's
feel
a
like
whole thing.
I think there's a internalized racism plays a role in that too, where you don't like to see, um, you will say that reading a Black author is the same, and it's not. I can't believe we have to tell people that it's not the same thing. And I'm not saying that these Black authors that don't write Black love should not get their respect, because they should, because they write good books. I know some of them who do, and I've read some of them who write outside. They're Black, but they write outside of Black experience. That's fine. I'm not going to knock it because I've read it and I've enjoyed it. But what? Why must you stop at the author? Why is the closest thing that you get to Black is the author, but you can't do it with the characters? What the hell is the hang up? Because I can't seem to put two and two together, because I sure as hell am not getting four. When I say two and two, two plus two is not equaling four in that equation, because I just don't get it. Like, you literally will stop at the author, but you will go no further than that. Why? What is it?
I don't get.
I don't know. Me too, Britt. Me too. I would love to see Black love represented in BDSM, Daddy Kink. Well, Polly, Katrina Jackson does a lot, a good bit of Polly. If you're wondering, I've read one of her Polly, and I think I may read one more of her Polly books this month coming up. Yeah, Aaron, most people don't know that Kenny Ryan is Black. She's a great writer. She's a fantastic writer. I've read 2 or 3 books by Kenny Ryan, and she has exquisite writing. But you would never know that she was Black. She does not frequently write, or does she? If she writes any Black characters, it usually is in interracial romance. If I'm not mistaken, I'm scrolling through covers in my head, and I think the most that I have seen from her, I think, is interracial. Yeah. Brit, Katrina Jackson noted. Did you like it? I gave because I think Shamala, you read it, right?
Which one?
What was the one with the gosh, what is it called? The heroine was plus size, which I loved. It was great plus size.
Oh, from scratch?
Yes. I gave that one
I didn't read it yet,
3.5
but
stars.
I
Okay, I
got
thought
it
you read it.
loaded. I got it locked and loaded. I just haven't.
Oh.
I've been trying to read my old stuff first.
Yeah. I read it and I gave it 3.5 stars. I think it's one of her earlier, it may be one of her earlier works. I think just technically just some writing stuff, but it was hot. And it was a MMF. So yeah, it was good. No,
I
Alicia, I
don't
have
think
not read
so.
Kenya
I just have
Wright.
to look at a cover because I
I
don't
thought
think I
Kenya Wright
have.
does mostly interracial.
Oh, okay. Yeah, probably I have not.
Yeah,
Probably.
I feel like Kenya Wright does mostly. I could be wrong now, but I think most of the covers I've seen from Kenya Wright are interracial romances.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't. No, I haven't read any of these.
Kenya
But
Wright.
these covers look.
Rebecca Weatherspoon BDSM series is interracial, I believe, as well. Yeah.
That Zenny and I forget the other Rafe, maybe.
That's the nanny. That's a nanny romance, and it's the beard and bond. Yeah, Chloe put it in there.
Okay, let's
The
see.
beards and bondage. I was gonna say beers. Yeah, the beards and bondage series is
Either way.
is interracial, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. It's just we're out here. We want to see what we like, and we want to see the ones that are actually doing it get promoted and get their flowers and get their recognition and get all of that
Mm.
here now. Um, they should be their praises should be sung just as loud as everybody else
Mm-hmm.
currently writing. Um,
Okay, Pages of Sin. Three Black Chicks podcast. Okay. Okay.
I think I listened to the first two of that one because it had Jasmine and uh what is her name? Is it Rhonda? I forget some of their names outside of their Twitter handles. I was listening to that and it was pretty good. I just sometimes when a podcast first starts, they don't have the audio worked out that great, and
Mm-hmm.
you have to decide to stick with it. so they get it together, and I think I did. I was just right on the first episode when they got it together. I can't talk. I'm not trying to talk shit. I'm just saying. I think that first episode they even said something about they were gonna get mics or something. So if you skip the first episode, you won't have that problem. What was that other one, Ashley, that you read recently that had the girl in like a African print two-piece outfit?
Yes.
It's
Okay.
like
So
yellow.
is it yellow?
Was it the outfit was like yellow? Maybe the cover was yellow, gold.
Gold?
Am I tripping?
I think you might be tripping. It's one that I
Dang, what
read
I can.
recently.
Yeah, I think you talked about it. Maybe in your indie rec or top 20, top 10, 2020 black indie romance.
Oh, you're
Dang.
talking about Training My Heart to Love You by Monica Walters.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that cover. Okay, what was that? What was the general atmosphere of that one?
That one was, I think that one for me I enjoyed because it was I thought the plus size representation was good, but
Yeah.
um it is focused on her and Zaysan being in a relationship or falling in love. But
Okay.
what was really intriguing on the back end of that was there's a lot of familial issues that go on.
Okay.
Uh, and I thought it was very interesting because her and her mom have their relationship um is really really touchy, but it's because of some other elements. And I think Monica Walters did a pretty decent job kind of talking about, Black community sweeping things under the rug, not talking about stuff,
Mm.
and the effects of what happened when we do stuff like that. So I almost wish it was a little longer so she could have covered that. Um, but she didn't. But I enjoyed it. I really really did enjoy that.
I agree with you, Britt, because I'm having a hard time reading everything that I want to read because they don't make them on audio, or I haven't been able to access an audio book of it. And I don't want the robotic Kindle, you know how
Yeah,
you can let you read. It'll read it to you, but it doesn't have any
doesn't have the
give you
feeling of
any
emotion.
flair, no
Not a Jacoby.
seasoning.
What's Jacoby's last name? Diem. Is that Jacoby's last name? The narrator. I think you're. Yeah, I can't hear you.
Sorry, my 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 earbud died.
Oh,
Um, is it Jacoby Jones? No, I think I'm thinking of a football player.
it's gotta be Jacoby. It's gotta be. It's Jacoby Diem. Is it not?
Don't give me the line. I have no
It is.
idea.
Britt. Yeah, Britt said it. Yeah, it's Jacoby Diem. Yeah. So the page.
Okay, look, she
Yeah,
would
yeah, yeah.
know.
Listen, because Jacoby did all of the well, you know that because you listened to the first two books in the oh gosh, why can't I remember the McLean brothers, damn it. And I'm about to get a t-shirt from I she got a t-shirt with all the four of the brothers' names on it. I just want a tank top that
Yeah,
has all their names on it. Then she has a pineapple like laptop sticker or something like that. That's pineapple. The joy.
Love to
But,
see it.
but Jacoby Diem does a great job.
He does.
He actually is narrating the series that I'm listening to now, which is is it the brother's last name? They're all Valentine brothers. That's their last name. But I can't remember the name of if the series is the Valentine brothers. But it's like one of those family saga romances as well. Oh, In the Heart of the Valentine. I think I told you about that one by Stephanie Nicole Norris. I got that from why am I forgetting her name? I see her face. I see her Instagram. I see. Come on, help me out here. Shades and Pages.
Oh, I don't know her. Yeah, I don't know her name though.
Gosh, why is that slipping my mind? She's got Rex on fucking deck.
Yeah, she does.
That's how I found. That's how I found the In the Heart of Valentine series.
She recommended one the other day because I commented about not having read a cougar story before, and I am excited to start that one. I can't.
Thank you, Sid.
What is it? This one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I was like, why can't I remember? And I'm like, I see her face. I see her Instagram. Yeah. She's got Rex out the ass.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
that was Shades and Pages.
Shades and Pages. Tia.
Am I skipping somebody?
No, I was looking at Britt saying No, didn't you? Oh, she said I have the McLean brothers names hoodie and the pineapple hoodie. Yes, I want those so bad. I do. I want those so badly because I just do. That series, my God, Neil. Big South is done. He's done. Neil
he's done.
Is done. He got kicked to the joke and have him now.
I gotta get to the third one you said?
No, you gotta get to the fourth one.
Okay.
Yeah, you gotta get to the fourth one.
Do I need to read the third one before I read the fourth one?
I would recommend because timeline wise, it picks up with events after the third one, and I think it gives you a better perspective of where Neil is prior to, because Neil just. I'm glad she kept Neil for last because Neil kind of gets painted in, I want to say derogatory, but like he's like the family screw up.
Yeah.
So by the time you get to Neil's book, I think readers have this perception like, you want to figure out why he is the way he is, and the way that she writes him, King, Black King.
All right, heard that. I got y'all.
Yeah.
I had both of them. I had the third and the fourth checked out for the longest time, Libby, and I just never got to them, and they went back. So they're usually pretty well available. So I just got to get on it. There's so many books I want to read this month in particular that I'm having a hard time fitting them in, especially if it's not an audiobook. I'm having a hard time.
Yeah, I am too.
So we have reached our 2-hour mark that we wanted to try to stay at. Do you think that we need to have an after hours?
Yeah, I think we should have an after hours. That would be fun.
Okay. So y'all go and get your wine and some water. And we're going to take a small break. And we're going to do us an after hours show to continue the conversation. I'm going to give you a few seconds to make sure y'all heard me say that because I know it's a little bit of a delay. But what is she saying?
Ooh, I need the hoodie.
Yes. Okay, y'all go and get your libations and we'll be back.